All right, so for the first part, we'll be creating the hair in Maya using XGen. I'll be going over how to set up your scene, including descriptions and collections, plates and curves, sculpting and curves, creating clumps and other modifiers, and how to create the density maps as well as the other useful maps. So you can see we have our model ready. Already set with UVs. For model, we have the main head, the wetness, which helps transition the eye and the rest of the head, the eyes, and a mesh which covers the eye that creates a nice shadow in the engine. It's important to set up your project properly, since all your XGen information will be saved within the project, just in case if you have to move things around to other computers. It's also important to remember to not mess around with your topology too much or the name of the mesh or merging anything. That can kind of mess up your project as well as deleting history. So to start, make sure your XGen plugin is on right here. And then to start, if your XGen tab isn't open, you can go over to the XGen tab and click on this button, which is X on it. And we can dock it if we need to. So to start off, click on your mesh and create new description. So description is kind of like the models in your scene, and a collection is kind of like the project itself, kind of like a folder. So let's call this female demo. And let's start with the right side. It's more to name these correctly since you'll be switching around different parts of the head frequently. And I like to use placing and shaping guides since I feel like it gives me more control. And it's a little bit less frustrating trying to mush around the hair. So you can start off by placing some curves. As you can see, the hairs are pretty short. So if we try previewing, click on the eye button. And as you can see, the hair is pretty short and scattered randomly. You can have it set to update automatically, as well as previewing just this description or multiple in case you have like the left head, top, or back. Let's start off with just the current one. If you want to hide the preview, just click on the close eye button. And this one has options as well. And if you want to preview but hide the guides, just click on this strand with the eyeball button. So right now we'll need it. So if you need to, you can increase the density. For right now, let's hide the hair preview. Let's make these longer. So right here, we can set the length. Let's go with something like 10. And then I like to use this button, which lets you sculpt the guides. If you need to just move one at a time, you can switch to your selection tool, select one, and then move it around. So you don't want your hair to like sticking straight out. There should be a little bit of curve to it. What we could do, since there are only a few segments, we can increase the amount of vertices. So if we look at the control points, there's only a couple, maybe 3. So what we'll do, select them, rebuild. Let's start with something like 16. You want to start off small and kind of block it out. Just try to shape the hair to how you feel will look correct based on your references. If you find your hair is a little wobbly, you can just pull on it and it will make it straight. It helps to use the tablet, but for this demo, I'll just be using my mouse. So when we're ready, we'll press the preview button. And if you like, you can keep it on and just keep moving around. So you can see, as you can see, the hair looks a little funny around here, so we'll just hide that and create a couple more guides. As you create more guides, they'll adapt to the surrounding guides. This could be tedious and time consuming, but you're gonna have to put in time in order to create a nice skirm. If you like, you can also create curves in other programs such as ZBrush Fiber Mesh, or just create curves in Maya or other software, and then convert the curves into guides. So you click on the utility, it'll highlight, give you options, and you can just create the guide. You'll have to have it correct and touching the mesh, by the way, but we don't need that. So let's preview again. So next, let's try modifying some of our hair now that we have a couple parts. So I'll hide the guides, go back to primitives, increase the density, increase how smooth it is. So maybe like 16 or even higher. Try not to go too wild since it might bog down your computer. You can set the length. I find I get more control if I just make the guides a little longer using set length. And if you move your guides around too much, sometimes there might be more control points in one spot than another, so you can normalize it if you need to. And you can always rebuild, of course. I'll set the width to about 0.03, which I feel like is a little realistic. And I like to control the tapering with the width ramp. I like to set to spline, since that'll give you a more natural curve. The hair usually starts a little thinner in the beginning and thinner at the end, but then has a little bit of a taper in the middle. As for density, I think I usually like to preview around 50. And when I'm all set, I'll just set it up to around 200. It really depends. As I said, you have to look at your reference and try to figure out how thick someone's hair is, since everyone has different thicknesses. So let's try using some of the modifiers. One that I usually use a lot is clumping. So you select it, press OK. So before you use it, you saw a little red error. You're going to have to set up a map. So you click on Set Up Maps right here. And you have to set density. That will set how many clumps you have and how close they are to each other. So you can see the clumps are kind of far apart. Not too close, but you can always make them even farther apart or closer. Let's try just the standard one. So generate. And if you keep pressing generate, you'll get random spots. And you press save. It's a little exaggerated, so let's bring it back a little bit. You want it to come to a point a little bit, but not too much. It really depends on your hair, though. As you can see, some of the previews went away, so you have to like zoom out to where the beginning spot is. Press refresh. And you can see the roots tapering in and out. Switch to spline. So right around the middle is where it's neutral. And if you bring it higher, it'll puff out or taper in. So I want to taper a little bit, but not too much. So what's powerful is stacking clumps to get an even more realistic look, since you usually have clumps within clumps. I like to use a little bit smaller of a clump. So let's try half of that, or even smaller than that. Or bigger, I mean. Smaller clumps, bigger number. Save. Right here is when it's very interactive. So that's why you want your previews to not be too crazy. You can also set how overall strong everything is, so you can make it a little crazier or weaker. Let's go a little weaker. And of course, you don't have to like just control the end and beginning. You can also change the middle, add more points to whatever you feel is good. Another modifier I would use after this would be the noise modifier. This will give you more of a randomness to it. So as you see, the ends get noisier based on the end point here on the ramp. And the beginning is where the roots are. And there's also everything in between, of course. You could change the frequency, which is how often it gets noisy, and the magnitude, which is how strong the noise is. That's a little crazy. And you can make it less so. And frequency, let's try that. So less often, but so masks, you can load up a mask, or you can use one of the pre-made expressions. One useful one I like to use is one of the noise maps. I'll give you a nice randomness, maybe clouds even. Really depends on what you're going for. You have to play around a lot and to get exactly what you're looking for. The cut modifier is also what I use at the end. You'll give it so that way your hairs aren't all the same length at the end. So you have two numbers. The first one, 0.0 and 0.2. The second number will control how the magnitude. So if I say 1, you get some more crazy cuts. And then the first number is how frequent it is. So maybe too frequent. If you ever need to find out what the defaults are, just create another one. So it looks like there's a comma to separate the expressions. You can always use other expressions that you can learn. There's a lot of different expressions. The random one works fine for me. Yep. So these are the 3 modifiers I use the most. And the fourth would be the coils, if you have wavy hair. If you want to, you can shift these down so they affect the hair before others. You can't go below clumping though. There's a kind of like a stack of priority. But I'll usually put coil before noise and cut. I don't always memorize what these things do, but I'll try out different things, see what looks good, create different masks, change the count. But I'll just play around, try different things, and see what works. These are the 4 I mainly use. So another important thing is where the hair will come up from. So I'll hide the hair display and create a mask. You could also use Photoshop to create this mask, but I'll just create mask. Name it right side mask. You can increase the resolution. And I usually start black. Create. And I'll hide this hair. I think wireframe helps a little bit. Double click this icon. Bring up your tool settings. I'll just start with soft brush. Painted white. Use a tablet when you got one. And make sure you put it in the right spot where you want it. So probably like not growing hair off the ear. Something like that. I usually split between like how the hair looks, what I'm going for. Sometimes I'll make a different type of hair for the sideburns for like say a female, since it'd be thinner. And when you're done, you can press accept or save. Another thing to note is that if you have some hairs like randomly coming off, you want to use a hard brush. But if you want more randomness coming out, then use a softer brush. So press the save the floppy disk button. And as you can see, the hair is only coming out from those spots. And we have a little bit of fall off, so we have some tapering on how dense the hair comes out from over there, as we can see. So switch back to your selection tool, bring everything back to normal, bring up the density if you want. Now we have some hair over there. So when you're ready to move on to another part of the head, select descriptions, make sure your mesh is selected. We're gonna have it in the same group, so right there. Let's name it rear hair demo. And we're gonna use the same method using guides. Let's place some hairs. let's make them longer. And let's groom them down. So then you just like repeat the same process for the rest of the head. And when you want to go back to your other groom, over here on descriptions, just select the right side, and we can go back to work on this. But yeah, see you in the next lesson.